who brought Sarah to my attention. And because I share a love for the environment and for doing all things sustainable. And I also care for people who don't have marginalized communities who don't have access to the same kinds of things most of us do. So I was really pleased to hear about Food Strong. And just so a little bit of background information on them, they were founded in 2018 by Sara, and it serves as an umbrella organization for two programs. It was her garden initiative and a caravan community wellness program, which was initially launched in 2017. Now, it started in two inner city schools, guiding students through designing, building, planting, maintaining, and harvesting their own on-site food and native flower gardens. They now serve 14 schools, which is just really impressive. And then in 2022, they added its vacant lot restoration initiative with support from Cuyahoga County. And in 2023, they launched a mobile farm stand from which they sell produce from their learning gardens, and other healthy local products are for sale. But in 2024, they acquired a 3-acre farm on Superior Avenue in downtown Cleveland as a donation and are in the process of transforming it into their headquarters and education hub. I think this is where Barb Belovich drove by and found out about it, Sara, and really got excited and brought her to our attention. So I don't want to tell all your story. I want you to tell us your story. But before we get started, I just want to know, can you tell us a little bit about your background, what got you interested in doing this?
Well, thanks for having me. It's an honor to be here today. Yeah, I guess, I have traveled the whole world and I was in Peace Corps in Burkina Faso, West Africa after college and saw hunger there pretty starkly and learned a lot about, the issues that, people in that village were facing and people in Africa were facing. And, I traveled all over the world and came home to America and realized that we have a ton of hunger right here in our own backyard, along with a ton of food waste. And it really made me angry. In fact, when I was in Africa, I did my first school garden as a Peace Corps volunteer. And then, I took what I learned there and applied it when I came back home, and just realizing how much our youth need to know about where their food comes from. I'd meet children in my other role at the Hunger Network when I was doing health and wellness programming at food pantries, and meeting children that had never seen or heard of celery before at age 12. So if you think about that, it just makes you really appreciate things we take for granted, and also want to ensure that all of our kids know where their food comes from and know how to cultivate it themselves. And another reason is having been at the Hunger Network and seeing people relying on, giveaways, which is important. Food justice or food security is important. Giving people enough to get through the day is important, but it's not sustainable. So what can we do to help people, feed themselves throughout their lives and just in a more self-reliant way? And that's what the difference is truly between food sovereignty and food security. And we are a food sovereignty organization. So, would you like me to launch into the slideshow? Okay. I'll go ahead and share my screen. I'm sending the request to share my screen. Okay. So, slideshow. So, here's a little slideshow presentation I put together a little while ago to kind of just talk about Food Strong. The big reason why we do what we do is because of the stark contrast in food access we see. We've all heard of the phrase food desert. I'm sure it's a place that doesn't have readily accessible fresh foods available to communities, especially in retail environments. Where do you go to buy your fresh foods? And 60% of Cleveland lives in a place that doesn't have access to fresh food. We call it now food apartheid because it's a systemic issue. This isn't some naturally occurring thing that took millions of years to form. It was pretty purposeful, if you will, when you look at things like redlining and other systemic disinvestment things that occurred here in Cuyahoga County and all across the country into the turn of the last century. So, we changed the name to food apartheid, and this is a big struggle in Cleveland, Ohio. In fact, 1 in 7 people in Cleveland, 1 in 4 seniors, and 1 in 4 children, very vulnerable populations, face food insecurity. So I just mentioned the idea of redlining. Well, this occurred back in the turn of the last century when a lot of people of color were being recruited from the South to come up to Cleveland, Northeast Ohio, to work in the steel mills. And they were coming up here because they're like, well, we'll probably experience less racism up here, given that Cuyahoga County and Cleveland were major stops on the Underground Railroad. So they were like, yeah, we're going to come up here and live a better life. And they largely did integrate pretty well into a lot of these largely Eastern European immigrant populations that we saw all over Cleveland. However, the systems and the powers that be didn't like that. So what they ended up doing was purposely dividing people from resources and concentrating certain people of color in the areas that you see are red, the redlined communities, calling them high-risk communities, and kept the resources out, the funding out, the loans out, all those other things. And with that went the grocery stores and other things. So really, this red line map, I like to overlay it over next to things like, I don't know, life expectancy, food desert or food apartheid map, right? You can look and see disease deaths by tract from different, chronic illness, blood poisoning, and climate change vulnerability. Do you happen to notice any consistencies with that original redlining map? It's the same map. It's not accidental. So this issue really is all of our problem because it's a systemic issue. This isn't just people not caring about their health. This is something that was purposefully done, and so it's up to all of us to help change it. And so I mentioned the phrase food sovereignty before. It's the right of peoples to healthy and culturally appropriate food produced through ecologically sound and sustainable methods. That's very important. And the people that consume the food, is their right to define their own food and ag systems, not the demands of markets and corporations. Those who produce, distribute, and consume the food should be the ones making decisions within food systems. However, it's not the case right now. And you'll see a bunch of pictures from our programs throughout the slideshow. Our mission is to cultivate food justice in Northeast Ohio and beyond by building enduring local food systems from the ground up. So we're all about collaborating and engaging our communities through the lens of fresh local foods to transform communities. And it's all about self-reliance and helping people help themselves, not rely on us to do everything. We do work with, not for. Our values, we're all about local food, justice, sustainability, inclusivity, and accountability, and measuring and evaluating consistently what we're doing to make sure that we're on the right track and adjusting as we continue to move on, because we change as an organization, the community changes, the society changes, and so we have to change with the times, and it's very important to hold ourselves accountable. Here's a map of our locations. As you can see, these are the darker areas, are the food apartheid areas, and you can see we're very heavily focused in those areas with our programming. We have 14 schools that we're in. We have our learning garden, which we just recently moved out of in East Cleveland because we can't be everywhere all the time. Trying to, but we're a small team. And our Superior Farm right here on Superior Avenue, which it's about here it is, about a mile from the lake. And then our office is in Tremont currently, although our goal is to move to the farm once it's set up. And I just made this little infographic to kind of show how our organization is structured. And we have the 3 major program buckets here at the top as like the outcome of the work we do, going from values through transformation. Our mission really is to take this disengaged attitude toward fresh local foods and food systems, which we not only see in, these under-resourced communities, but really everywhere. I mean, a child can nowadays can identify thousands of logos and not even five native plants or animal species. It's just the way everything's set up. We're so disengaged. So instead of disengaging, we have a path that we follow from fostering appreciation for fresh local foods and gardening through our school programs, our community programming, our outreach, and then we expand access through the work we're doing, like the vacant lot restoration work, our mobile farm stand, our caravan community wellness program where we offer resources and connection to food, and then we help promote the adoption of these local fresh food systems in the communities we serve by doing things like cooking demonstrations and showing people how to use these foods every day. The salad bars, every school we're in Cleveland Public Schools does get a salad bar because of our relationship with the nutrition department. So they focus on our schools, and they say that of the schools that they have a salad bar, which is about half of all the schools that we serve by far use the most fresh produce out of the salad bars. So the kids are really learning. So these are our three major program buckets. We have youth education, community engagement, and urban restoration. So youth education is what we do in the schools. We do everything from teaching kids how to cook, to how to start their own food-based businesses. We talk about environmental stewardship. We fold in social emotional learning, STEAM skill building, and then of course we do the whole school garden on site. Every school gets its own garden, and we host field trips. And of course nutrition, everything we do. So we're not going to just tell you that a tomato is healthy, but we'll talk about the lycopene in that tomato, which makes it red, and how it's good for your heart and your immune system and things like that. So we teach with a why. It's not just, hey, you should do this, but really painting the full picture. Our community engagement, that's our caravan events, when we're doing workshops in the community, we teach everything from foraging to food preservation, gardening, things like that. And then our urban restoration, which is now focused heavily at the Superior Farm. So just to dive a little deeper into our programs, we have our food sovereignty school program. We're in about 14 schools at least once a week, some more than others. And like I kind of already gave the gist of it, but we do serve almost 400 kids annually right now. Although with all the school closures, that's reduced heavily next year. But what we plan on doing, instead of trying to go into new schools to replace the schools that are closing, we'll just dive deeper and serve more students in more classes and build bigger gardens at the schools we are going to stay in, just to have a quality, more quality over quantity type approach. We've seen improved attendance on days that we're there. So kids will ask when we're coming, and if they know they're coming and know we're coming, they will actually be less likely to be absent, even those who are chronically absent. We have noticed improvement in various social emotional skills, their team building, content knowledge, and their interest in the various topics we cover. You could see that we do so many different things, everything from art to gardening to exploration, science experiments, planting, weeding, cooking, drilling. We teach them how to build the gardens. Actually, that picture up here is the Max Hayes High School students have a roving garden program, and so they come out and teach our younger kids how to use the drills and put together garden beds. They also show how to use technology. Everyone's in their tech. Well, here's how you can use tech to identify plants or, read nutrition labels. We tell every kid about the Yucca app. You can scan barcodes at the grocery store. We have principals calling saying parents are calling them.
A lot of people from our church.
Yeah. So we have principals calling us and telling us that parents are calling in and wondering what's going on because their kids are scanning barcodes at the grocery store and talking about GMOs. They're like, what's going on? But they're really happy about it. They're learning, and they're able to bring this information home to their families. So we have our caravan program. We offer everything from health screenings, live music, fitness, resources. We sell fresh produce. we did this program here at the bottom left at the Kuwait market for years and years. And as you can see, there's a lot of people there. And usually that market's pretty dead. So I'm proud of what we've been able to build over the years. This was about a mile south of the beach over in the East Cleveland area next to Collinwood. And this was our first foray into restoration of an urban environment. It started here on the top left and down here on the left, where it was just basically just a bunch of weeds. It was not pretty, but through the 5 years we were there, we transformed it into this.
Wow.
And that's a lot of volunteers, a lot of support from the community. And it started because the students up here on the left, they were from Iowa Maple Elementary. And during COVID, that school closed permanently about 2 weeks after the lockdown started. So those kids didn't even get to say goodbye to each other. And I wasn't having it. So we brought them to the farm and we continued working together during the pandemic because they needed that activity. You know, a lot of kids had places to go, food to eat, you know, their own bedrooms or offices to work in. They had internet. But kids in the communities we serve didn't have hardly any of those things. Oftentimes they would rely on the food that they were getting in the schools or the internet or the technology from the schools. Like they didn't, who was already behind fell even further behind. And we're seeing the detrimental impact from that still to this day. And then some of the other programs we offer, you know, here's the mobile farm stand on the right. So we transformed a pop-up camper because we couldn't afford a food truck, but anyone could get a pop-up camper off of Facebook Marketplace for $500. So our goal is to really show others how to do this because you can not only use it to sell stuff, but you can use it to transform it into a commercial kitchen and other things. And it's more accessible that way. So we just got a $100,000 USDA grant, and what we're going to do with that is do a 2-year R&D, like planning project, so that we can take what we did here and build it into a full-scale farm truck, but then also build upon what we did with this pop-up camper and maybe other types of affordable, accessible things that can be transformed to show people that there's different ways to do it. Because one thing we notice is when people want to sell at farmers markets or sell their food at events, it's really hard to pass all the regulations that the county puts on people. And so just trying to help people support them so they can pursue their own workforce development dreams. And then this leads to the Superior Avenue Community Farm, where we are now. We're just 1 mile south of Lake Erie, and therefore what we're doing is making a big impact, because that 3 acres, if you get rid of the asphalt and build gardens and plant more trees, that's going to be more permeability and therefore supporting our watershed better, because there is a lot of pavement and a lot of toxicity in the land, air, and water over there. So anything we can do to support that. It's a great location. And also the Cleveland Foundation is building a 66th Street corridor. You know, they're restoring that 66th Street. It starts over here on Euclid Avenue, and you go down and you dead end right at our property. So it's a pretty cool location. The history of the property is that it was Lithuanian church. After the Beckenbaus sold it in 1910 to the diocese. Before then, it was a farm. And so now it became a full circle situation. Pretty cool. So these are the original blueprints. This is a construction photo. And then photos of them using it. Then it was Community Greenhouse Partners back in 2010 until 21. And they did a lot of permaculture. They built hoop houses, and they did a lot of gardening there. And then fast forward to 24, we were donated this property. And so it was a hot mess. We have filled up 10 dumpsters since we've been there. We've hosted nearly, going now on 4,000 volunteers. And we have cleaned up the property significantly. This house here, this is the original farmhouse, that was filled top to bottom with garbage and furniture. So it's completely empty now and ready for its next lease on life. We just need to raise money for it, which has been a hard part, because when we took this on, it was like when everything in society felt like it was collapsing all at once. So we really could use some support on this, but we have done so much with just the volunteers and the community love that we've received. The goal being, here's the north lot. You can see there's a bunch of fruit trees they planted over here. We're keeping those. This is the forest. We've been building pathways through the forest. Here's where the farmhouse is. So we're going to build a community farm over here in the north lot. We're going to have our offices and offer nonprofit office space to others who want to occupy the property, vocational training and services, programming, workshops, events. It's going to be a hub. So this is, we had a 5-year strategic plan, which we've been revamping, and we're going to kind of do a little bit of alterations, but it's a 5-year plan, and it started with the acquisition of the farm, and every year we're kind of adding different elements to the process. Here's the phased out approach. So phase 1 is the clean out, the remediation, the repairs of the church that keep it alive, and getting into that house. Phase 2 is once we're in the house, we could do the placemaking, more programming, and build out the farm. And then while we're building out that farm, we'll be raising funds through different capital to restore the church, which is a massive, very expensive endeavor. But once that's active, it's got 8 classrooms in it that we could use for various educational programming. I want to do indoor hydroponics. I want to have mushrooms growing in the basement. We have a commercial kitchen where we can help incubate entrepreneurs as well as teach others on various culinary arts programs, and also cater events at the church. Imagine being able to go to a wedding that was catered with farm fresh food that was grown on site. Pretty exciting. And the church is very beautiful inside. Once it's restored, there's so much potential. I love this quote: from soil to self-sufficiency, launching a farm that nourishes and sustains. So like I said, phase 1 is really, building out the, supporting our work, getting a site cleaned out, remediated, and ready for some of that next steps. The building into that headquarters, and then also how we're going to start to create diversified revenue streams to support it. Once this thing is really off the ground, one of the reasons I wanted to do this was because, when you can have space to lease out or hold events or programs, there's different ways to raise money and support the organization and not have to constantly rely on grants, which is just very nerve-wracking, especially in this day and age. What happened with a lot of organizations is that we got a lot of dollars from the COVID era, from ARPA, and then all at once, it just seemed the government pulled them all away. So everyone that had to hire people to build out the programs that they got support for during that time, now it's like, okay, now you're all struggling. And so a lot of organizations are in the same boat. So trying to diversify revenue so you're not as vulnerable to those types of changes. And then the church revitalization will be further down the road. We have a ton of in-kind supporters that have got donated and volunteered along the way. Here is a plan of what the site will look like. So here's Superior. This is 67th. Here's Edna. The farm will be over here. We'll have a ton of parking. And then here's the farmhouse. The forest is in the front. And then we're building out this green gateway. It's a vacant lot over here that we are transforming into a community accessible green space where people can come and recreate and gather. Here's some of the designs for the farmhouse. So once we can raise the money to restore it, it's from the mid-1800s. We just found a magazine up there from 1834. Magazine from 1834. Like, that's crazy. So we don't really know how old it is, but it definitely deserves to be loved. And there's not a lot of Italianate style homes like this left in the city. Here's some ideas for the farms. It's going to be a kind of permaculture, diversified space. So it's not going to be rows and rows of this or that. It's going to be a lot of different types of things. And this will be where the farm is. So this is the view from the north looking south onto the farm. We've raised almost 300 so far to support this. And there's ways to get involved. So we have open volunteerism. You can scan this barcode or learn more at our website. And sign up to volunteer. We have open times Thursdays from 10 to 1 or 4 to 7, second Saturdays 9 to 1. And we have school programming that people can volunteer during. We'd love to bring someone in once a week to build relationships with the kids while supporting the program. And then, of course, a ton of in-kind needs that we have, from carpentry, plumbing, different types of support, and or, we could really use some dollars right now. So if you know anyone that's, you know, is blessed to have extra resources, we would love to accept them. This link also takes you to different ways to donate. So that's really what we got here. And you can scan the barcode for more info. That's about what I got, and I'm totally open to some questions.
Okay. All right. Let me see here. I'm going to, can you guys hear me? Yeah? Okay, great. So
Yes.
here's some questions. First of all, I think it's just unbelievable what you're doing, Sarah. I think this is just so amazing. I'm also kind of stunned by the statistics of the number of people that are hungry, the number of elderly that are going hungry, and also all these parts of Cleveland that were all part of that kind of redlining and all the health outcomes of what's going on. It just shows you that we really need to look at the data. We need to understand it. We need to pay attention to what it's telling us. And some of it isn't very good. So thank you for bringing that to our attention. So here's some of the questions. Here's one from Barb Belovich. She said, at 75, I finally figured out that fast food is awful for my health. I'm slow, but how do you approach teaching the value of real food to kids when fast food is everywhere?
Yeah, and fast food advertising. I mean, we adopted two kids from Russia. They both asked for McDonald's before they could speak any English at all. They knew McDonald's at 3 years old in Russia, and it was amazing to me. And it's just that pervasive in our culture, right?
Well, that's one of the reasons why I started a garden program, because it's one thing to say, hey, this is healthy for you, or you should try this, but it's another thing when you grew that from seed.
Yeah.
It's things that kids never wanted to try. All of a sudden, they're tasting it, it's sun ripened, it's
Hmm.
sweet, it's juicy, it's
Yeah.
delicious. They're like, wow, that's really good. And like, is there something magical when you grew it yourself? So getting kids like back outside in the soil, learning about where food comes from, experiencing it, foraging and learning all the different ways you can get food, not just having a typical garden, I think is important. And then also, like when you get something like the Yucca app and you start scanning barcodes, the Yucca app will give it a score 0 to 100. And I
Okay.
guarantee you McDonald's probably scores 0,
Yeah. The
maybe
Yucca
5.
app.
Yuka. So you can get them
Okay.
just
Okay.
everyone loves their phone. So give them an app on their phone and send them on a scanning spree in the grocery store
Right.
and
Right.
and show them.
Yeah. Wow.
Wow,
That's
that's a great
great.
idea. Here's another question. Are you aware of Solidarity Urban Farms in Lorain, Ohio? They are now a nonprofit that began as an effort of the Episcopal Church of the Redeemer. People in the neighborhood and outside the neighborhood volunteer. There is a weekly market in the Reed Avenue neighborhood. Do you know about that place?
I think I've heard of them. Yeah, you get connected when you do this kind of work. You get connected to a lot of different
Yeah,
places like that. But yeah, they're doing great work. There's a ton
yeah.
of great things happening throughout our Northeast Ohio. I'm very proud of.
Okay.
I was just thinking
Um,
that's such a great networking. I don't see them doing the things with children that you're doing. I think they have a little different focus, but yeah,
yeah. Um, I have a question about your funding. I mean, I'm very impressed that you get a lot of, it sounds like you've gotten a lot of grants and it sounds like you got some COVID money, but that's kind of dried up. So how are you sustaining yourself?
Well, right now it's grants that we kind of stocked up on, and they're slowly going away. And so we're generating grants, so we're churning them out right now
hmm
that's just what we have right now because we don't have a ton of opportunities to use for revenue
hmm
generating on the site yet. Um, but we do that, and we do sell our produce to the school district. It's not very lucrative, but it's something. And we have an annual gala. It's coming up on September 9th. You can go to our website to learn more. You can buy a ticket, or we have sponsorship opportunities anywhere starting at 500 up to $7,500. We love to work with local partners and with whatever they're willing and able to do. But that's a really fun event this year. It's called Botanical Wonderland. It's a Alice in Wonderland themed event. And so that's going to be a cool thing. So we do that every year. And then, we're just looking at different ways. It's just hard when you're stretched really thin trying to do so many things to like dive deep into any one of them. But those are some of the things we're thinking about.
So another question is, so where do you get your soil and how do you keep it healthy and nutritious? A lot of science opportunity there.
We do work with Rust Belt Riders. They provide a lot of soil as well as Kurtz Brothers. We also compost our own stuff, and we do a layering method. So, using layers of wood chips, soil, cover crops. You can do all kinds of different, depending on what the soil needs, depending on what you're going to grow. But we do a lot of, just, nutritious plant-based matter that we add to it. And then when you're building a garden bed, if you use the hugelkultur method, where you put the logs at the bottom, which then regenerate over time as they break down, turning it
Yeah.
into more soil. So using things that continue to regenerate into soil as the time progresses is a great strategy as well.
Question. Will folks be able to rent your commercial kitchen once it's completed?
Yes, when it's completed, maybe 2030, 2031, hopefully.
Hey, so Sarah, I'm wondering, has the county given you any money
When
or
it
have
was
you approached the
under,
county?
my homie Armand Budish gave us some money. Love me
Oh,
some
okay.
Armand, but
Okay.
then that went away.
Okay. Because the Ohio City Farm received a huge grant from Cuyahoga County to build their new pavilion on their property. I'm sure you know about that. So, okay.
I love them.
Um,
They're great.
yeah.
Mhm.
What other local organizations do you work with?
We have about 100 plus different organizations we work with. Some of our major partners include the school districts that we work with, Youth Opportunities Unlimited, where we host our students. We work with all the different hospitals. We work with every major university in the area. We work with a lot of different local nonprofits and community groups and chefs and chef organizations and farmers and I mean, the list goes on and on. We have a ton of, and then a lot of in the corporate sector too. We're trying to build that up even more to get some corporate money and support. But we have a lot of partnerships. We're very blessed.
Okay. And your staff, how large is your staff?
Right now, there's two full-time of us, two part-time, and then about four contractual workers.
Okay. Is
We're
your
Wow.
small.
grant writer, is that person full-time? Okay. I'm just
She's
curious.
part-time, but I
They're
do
trying-
support that too. And thank
Yeah.
God for AI. So that helps us a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah. Okay. Um, so someone said, you look exhausted. Are you okay? You're doing amazing, really awesome work. How can we support you?
Well, thanks for asking. I am pretty exhausted. It's just been a lot. Springtime, there's a lot of things to put together. I think, um, you know, me personally, it's a hard question. I don't really think about myself too much. I'm just too ingrained in this. Um, Prayers would be great for this and for me, for the organization. I think it would be wonderful. And sharing the word about us and helping spread the word about opportunities to get involved and to support would be really important. We'd love to have you come out on one of our open volunteer days while we're there if you want to get a tour.
Hey, Sarah, so did you grow up in Northeast Ohio?
Yeah. I went to Orange. I grew up in Woodmere.
Okay, grew up in Woodmore. And then, so you said you went to the Peace Corps. Was that right out of college?
Yes.
Okay, and what did you major in college in?
I got a degree in English and a degree in human development family science. I was going to be a teacher. I've always been a teacher.
Oh, he's been a teacher, so you went to Africa. Well, it sounds like it had a profound effect on you, and that you came back and you're doing all this great work. This is so exciting. Is anybody else have anything else to say or any questions? I think that was everything that was in the chat. And but I just think this is really amazing work. And we're located on 71st East 71st Street. So we're kind of right smack in Midtown, and we're surrounded by we found out in our area there are 22 churches, and actually there are quite a few residents. You wouldn't think there are, but there are a lot of people that live in that area as well.
Hmm.
So I understand that this idea of food desert, and there really is no real grocery store right around there, except that there's an Aldi's on Euclid. But I'm
And
not sure what is on.
There's a Dave's on
There's a
like
Dave
65th and
60
Chester.
Chester, right?
at Chester, right? Yeah,
But it is, I mean, if you don't have a car and you live on 30th,
yeah.
40th, or like further away, I mean, like the general definition of a food apartheid area is less than half a mile from food because that's not considered walkable, especially if you have a kid or whatever. So yeah, there's some access, but there's still a lot of gaps.
Does anybody else have any more questions? I think this is just really amazing. I'll follow up with you, Sarah, because I think I'm sure lots of people in the community would like to help you.
Thank
So
you. I
we'll
appreciate you
try to
all.
figure out how we can do that. And
Thank you.
but this is just such really good work, and it really is lockstep with our values, and certainly our climate conversation group. We're all about sustainability in every shape and form, but teaching people who don't have access to good food about food and how they can grow it themselves, I think is just such a wonderful idea. You know,
Thank you.
many of us, I come from a farm background. I mean, my family, I'm from Kansas, from Western Kansas, where
Mm.
everybody grew up on a farm. So I understand the idea of growing your own food and sustaining your family that way. But in big cities, I'm not sure that that's an idea that people grow up with. So kudos to you for doing this. And certainly, you can visit her website at www.foodstrong.org to find out more about, and it goes into more details about all of her programs and everything that they're doing and whatever. So anyway, so Sarah, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I know you're under a lot of pressure right now. So, but anyway,
Hey,
really appreciate the effort tonight to
Judy,
do this. Yeah,
Judy, I have
yeah.
one other question that I was wondering if Sarah could comment on. So, I had the opportunity to see Claire Fontenot, the retiring president of Food for America, speak last week at Elyria High School, and was just astounded at the numbers that she quoted in America. Um, we all know that there's hungry people in America, but when she actually gave us the numbers, I was astonished. So I've seen in just following the news in my own community that recently we've had an issue where there was an Aldi's in an inner city neighborhood in Elyria, and it was very accessible for people. People could walk there. They could get fresh fruit and vegetables that were reasonably priced. And they could also get like handicap busing there. So it was a good spot. And but the Aldis couldn't stay in business because they lost so much money due to theft. They
Ah,
moved out of the area and now they're in an area of Chestnut Commons, which really is not accessible unless people have a car. Um, can you comment on that? It seems to me it's like punishing people for the wrong actions of a few rather than maybe enforcing correct behavior by those few that are walking out with food or finding out why are you walking out with food? You know what I'm saying? Can you comment on this? I mean, I think this is part of the reason that food, these food is a business. And I think that's why they left because they couldn't sustain their business.
If you can't sustain your business, then you can't pay your people, and then you don't have staff, then you can't keep your
Yeah,
business open. So I see both sides. I mean,
yeah,
if people are impoverished, they can't afford the food there, they're going to do what they have to do.
yeah.
Unfortunately, that's not how a grocery store can sustain. And in fact, grocery stores operate at a very low margin of profit anyway. So
Mhm.
there's not a lot of room for theft because that will hurt them too much. And, I think that we need to, maybe support other types of education too and outreach in terms of promoting, things like food pantries and things if you can't afford stuff. Um, and maybe being more creative, but if you have a grocery store and people can't afford to buy your stuff, you're going to go where people can afford to buy your stuff. That's unfortunately the truth, and that's just the way things are right now. Unless they do something different, like you have a checkout window, like you just come get your
Yeah,
stuff. You order in advance. You can't come in.
yeah.
Unfortunately, it sounds like a punishment, but I mean,
Mhm.
even though it's a nonprofit, I still have a business, and if I don't get income, we have to shut down. It is what it is, unfortunately.
Yeah,
But that's why growing your own food is so important.
yeah, yeah.
Well, thank you guys so much for having me. It was
Yeah,
such
thank
a pleasure. I
you.
hope to see you all at the farm sometime. Take
Yes, we
care.
will.
Thank you,
We'll have
Sarah.
to bring a group this summer for a field trip. Okay.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah,
Thank
sounds
you.
like
All
fun.
right. Okay.
All
Yeah.
Thank
right.
you.
Bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.